You know what breaks my heart? It's seeing good people, people with pure souls, carrying guilt for things they shouldn't feel guilty about. People who gave everything they had, who tried with all their strength, who loved with all their heart, and still believe they failed. Still believe they weren't enough. If that's you today, if you're listening to this with that weight on your chest, I need you to hear something. I need you to really hear it, not just with your ears, but deep in your soul where that pain lives. You did enough. You were enough. You are enough. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about that moment you wish you could change. That word you said wrong. That time you lost your patience. That choice you made when you were tired, when you were scared, when you didn't know any better. You carry it like a stone tied around your heart. You replay it over and over, punishing yourself for being human. But let me ask you something. When you look back at your life, at all those years, do you see someone who tried? Do you see someone who got up every morning, even when their body hurt, even when their heart was breaking, and did what needed to be done? Do you see someone who worked, who sacrificed, who gave up their own dreams so others could have theirs? Because God sees that. God sees every single moment you tried. Every tear you cried alone in the kitchen. Every night you stayed awake worrying. Every prayer you whispered when you didn't know what else to do. Every time you pushed yourself beyond what you thought you could handle because someone needed you. You think He's keeping score of your mistakes? You think He's making a list of every time you fell short? No. He's not like the voices in your head that tell you that you failed. He's not like the people who only remember what you did wrong and forget everything you did right. God sees your heart. And your heart tried. Your heart loved. Your heart gave everything it had. There's so much pain in feeling like you weren't a good enough parent. Like you should have done more, been more, known more. You look at your children now and you see the ways they struggle, the ways they hurt, and you blame yourself. You think if only you had been better, stronger, wiser, they would be happier. But can I tell you something true? You did the best you could with what you had. You didn't have all the answers because nobody does. You made mistakes because you're human, not because you didn't love them enough. And the truth is, they have their own path to walk, their own lessons to learn, their own relationship with God to build. You can't carry their whole life on your shoulders. You weren't meant to be perfect. You were meant to be real. And real love, the kind that shows up even when it's messy, even when it's tired, even when it doesn't have all the right words, that's the love that matters most. I'm talking to the mother who thinks she failed because her child made choices she didn't want them to make. I'm talking to the father who feels like he didn't provide enough, even though he broke his back working. I'm talking to the husband or wife who feels guilty because the marriage ended, even though they tried to hold it together with everything they had. You gave your best. And your best was real. It was honest. It was full of love, even when it was full of struggle. The world will tell you that you should have done more. That you should have been stronger, calmer, smarter. The world measures everything by results, by success, by perfection. But God doesn't measure like that. God measures by the heart. And your heart was in it. Completely. Do you know how many nights you went to bed exhausted, feeling like you failed, when really you had just spent the whole day loving people who might never say thank you? Do you know how many times you did something good, something kind, something brave, and nobody noticed but God? He noticed. Every single time. You didn't fail your children just because they have pain in their lives. Pain is part of being human. Struggle is part of growing. You didn't fail your marriage just because it ended. Sometimes two people can both try their hardest and still not be able to make it work. You didn't fail at your job, your friendships, your dreams just because things didn't turn out the way you hoped. You showed up. You tried. You kept going even when you wanted to give up. That's not failure. That's courage. And I know there are people listening right now who are so tired. Tired of trying. Tired of feeling like it's never enough. Tired of carrying guilt for things they can't change. If that's you, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to let some of that weight go. You don't have to be perfect to be loved by God. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to fix everything. You just have to keep your heart open. Keep trying. Keep loving. Even in small ways. Even on the hard days. Because here's what I know to be true. When you stand before God one day, He's not going to ask you why you weren't perfect. He's not going to list all the times you made mistakes. He's going to look at you with so much love, and He's going to say, I saw you try. I saw your heart. I saw how much you loved. And that was always enough for me. Your best is enough. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. Because it's real. Because it came from a place of love, even when love was hard. If this message is touching your heart right now, if you're feeling something shift inside you, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. Leave a like on this video. Not for me, but so this message can reach other people who need to hear it. People who are carrying the same guilt you carry. People who need to know they're not alone. Because you're not alone. And you never were. God has been with you every step of the way. In every moment you thought you failed, He was there saying, I see you. I love you. You're doing better than you think. And that's the truth you need to hold onto today. Your best, with all its imperfections, with all its struggle, with all its humanness. Your best is enough. It always has been. It always will be. You know what steals our peace more than anything else? Comparison. Looking at other people's lives and thinking they did it better. Thinking they had it figured out when we were still stumbling in the dark. Thinking they were stronger, smarter, more faithful than we ever could be. But let me tell you something that will set you free if you let it sink in. You weren't meant to live their life. You were meant to live yours. With your struggles. With your limitations. With your unique battles that nobody else can fully understand. God didn't give you someone else's strength. He gave you yours. And your strength, even on the days it felt like weakness, was exactly what you needed to get through what you went through. I'm talking to the person who looks at their neighbor and thinks, they raised their children better than I did. Their kids turned out so well. But you don't know what happened behind those closed doors. You don't know what struggles they faced that you didn't see. And more importantly, you don't know what your own children needed that only you could give them, even imperfectly. I'm talking to the person who thinks, I should have been stronger when my spouse left. I should have held it together better. But maybe falling apart was exactly what your soul needed to do. Maybe those tears you cried alone were prayers that God heard. Maybe your breaking was the beginning of your healing. Stop measuring your inside against everyone else's outside. Stop comparing your worst moments to their best ones. Stop thinking that because someone else seemed to handle life with grace, your struggle meant you were doing it wrong. There's no manual for this life. There's no instruction book that tells you exactly how to be a perfect parent, a perfect partner, a perfect child of God. We're all just doing our best with what we know, with what we have, with what we can carry. And here's something beautiful about God's love. He doesn't love you less because you struggled more. He doesn't look at you with disappointment because your path was harder than someone else's. He looks at you with tenderness, with understanding, with a love so deep it covers every single moment you thought you weren't enough. You did enough in your marriage, even if it ended. Because love isn't measured by whether it lasts forever. Love is measured by whether it was real, whether it tried, whether it showed up even when showing up was hard. And you showed up. Day after day. Year after year. Until you couldn't anymore. That's not failure. That's being human. That's honoring yourself and your limits. That's knowing when to let go, even when letting go breaks your heart. You did enough as a parent, even if your children are struggling now. Because you can't protect them from every pain. You can't make all their choices for them. You can't live their lives. All you could do was love them, guide them the best you knew how, and trust that God has a plan for them that's bigger than your mistakes. Your children's journey is their own. Their relationship with God is their own. Their healing is their own. You planted seeds. You watered them with your love, your prayers, your sacrifice. But the growing, that's between them and God. You did enough at work, even if you never got the recognition you deserved. Even if you never climbed as high as you wanted. Even if you spent 40 years doing something that felt small. Because no honest work is small in God's eyes. No faithful effort goes unseen. The world might not have noticed you. The world might have overlooked you. But God saw every morning you got up when you didn't want to. Every task you completed even though you were tired. Every kind word you spoke to someone who needed it. Every moment you chose to do the right thing even when nobody was watching. That matters. All of it matters. And I need you to understand something about guilt. Guilt has a purpose. It's meant to teach us, to help us grow, to show us where we need to make amends or change direction. But once you've learned the lesson, once you've apologized where you needed to apologize, once you've done what you could to make things right, guilt has done its job. Carrying it beyond that point isn't faithfulness. It's punishment. And you weren't meant to punish yourself for the rest of your life. God forgave you the moment you asked. The moment you truly regretted what you did wrong. The moment your heart broke over your own mistakes. He forgave you then. Completely. Fully. Without holding anything back. So why are you still holding onto what He already let go of? Why are you still beating yourself up over something He already covered with His grace? I know it's hard to forgive yourself. I know that voice in your head that says, "But I should have known better. I should have done better." But should have, could have, would have, those words keep you trapped in a past you can't change. What you can change is today. What you can change is how you see yourself right now. You can choose to see yourself the way God sees you. Not as someone who failed, but as someone who tried. Someone who loved. Someone who did their best with an honest heart. And if your best wasn't perfect, join the rest of us. Nobody's best is perfect. That's why we need grace. That's why we need God's love that doesn't depend on us getting everything right. You're allowed to rest now. You're allowed to stop carrying the weight of everything that didn't go the way you planned. You're allowed to look at your life and say, "I did what I could. And what I did was enough." Because it was. Even if nobody else tells you that. Even if you never hear the thank you that you deserve to hear. Even if the people you loved most never understood how much you gave. God knows. And in the end, that's what matters. If you're finding comfort in these words, if something in your heart is starting to feel lighter, would you take a moment to like this video and share it? There's someone in your life who needs to hear this message today. Someone who's been carrying the same burden you've been carrying. Someone who needs to know that their best is enough too. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just have to be you. Trying. Loving. Doing your best. Even when your best feels small. Even when your best feels broken. Because to God, your best, exactly as it is, has always been more than enough. There comes a moment in life when you have to make a choice. You can keep carrying everything that went wrong, every regret, every what if, every person you couldn't save, every dream that didn't come true. Or you can finally set it down. You can finally rest. And rest doesn't mean you stop caring. Rest doesn't mean you didn't love them enough. Rest means you trust that God is bigger than your mistakes. That His plan is wider than your understanding. That His love covers what your efforts couldn't reach. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine standing before God, holding all these heavy bags. Bags full of guilt. Bags full of shame. Bags full of every time you think you failed. And you're trying to explain yourself. You're trying to tell Him why you weren't good enough. But before you can even start, He takes those bags from your hands. All of them. Every single one. And He says, "I never asked you to carry these. I never wanted you to." He knew you would make mistakes. He knew you would fall short. He knew you would have moments of weakness, moments of doubt, moments where you just couldn't do it anymore. And He loved you anyway. He loves you anyway. Not in spite of your limitations, but with them. All of them. Because your limitations are part of being human. And being human was never a sin. Struggling was never a sin. Trying and failing was never a sin. The sin would be pretending you're something you're not. The sin would be refusing to accept the grace that's been offered to you all along. You've been so hard on yourself. Harder than anyone else would be. Harder than God ever was. You've held yourself to a standard that even angels couldn't meet. And in doing that, you've forgotten something beautiful. You've forgotten that you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be loved. And you are loved. Right now. In this moment. With everything you've done and everything you haven't done. With all your regrets and all your wounds. With all your trying and all your failing. You are loved completely. So what do you do with that? How do you move forward from here? You start by being gentle with yourself. By talking to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love who's hurting. Would you tell your best friend that they weren't good enough? Would you tell your child that their best didn't matter? No. You would hold them. You would comfort them. You would remind them of all the good they've done. Do that for yourself now. Hold yourself with tenderness. Speak to yourself with kindness. Look in the mirror and say, I did my best. And my best was enough. Say it even if you don't believe it yet. Say it until it starts to feel true. Because it is true. It's always been true. You start by letting go of the people you couldn't change. The ones who walked away. The ones who chose a different path. The ones who couldn't receive your love the way you wanted to give it. You gave them what you could. You loved them the best way you knew how. And that's all you could ever do. Their choices are theirs. Their journey is theirs. And releasing them doesn't mean you love them less. It means you love yourself enough to stop breaking your heart over what you couldn't control. You start by forgiving yourself for not knowing things you couldn't have known. For not being stronger when you were already carrying too much. For being human in a world that demands perfection. For breaking when the weight got too heavy. Forgiveness isn't saying it didn't matter. Forgiveness is saying it mattered, you learned from it, and now you're choosing peace over punishment. You start by thanking God for carrying you through everything you thought would destroy you. Every loss. Every betrayal. Every moment you wanted to give up. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still trying. That's not weakness. That's the hand of God holding you up when you had nothing left. Look at how far you've come. Look at everything you survived. Look at all the mornings you got out of bed when staying under the covers felt easier. Look at all the times you chose love even when you felt empty. Look at all the prayers you whispered when you didn't think anyone was listening. God was listening. Every single time. And here's what I want you to know as we come to the end of this message. Your life isn't over. Your story isn't finished. There are still chapters to write. There are still people to love. There are still moments of joy waiting for you. There are still reasons to hope. But those things can only come when you stop living in the past. When you stop punishing yourself for being imperfect. When you finally, truly believe that your best was always enough. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you lived your life. You don't owe anyone a defense for the choices you made when you were doing the best you could. You don't owe anyone permission to rest now. You just rest. You just breathe. You just let yourself be held by a love that never demanded perfection in the first place. And when those voices come back, the ones that say you should have done more, been more, tried harder, you speak truth back to them. You say, I did enough. I was enough. And God's grace covers the rest. That's the truth that will set you free. Not that you were perfect. But that you didn't need to be. Not that you never failed. But that failure doesn't define you. Not that you got everything right. But that love, real love, messy love, trying love, that's what mattered all along. If this message has touched you, if you feel something shifting in your heart, I want to ask you one more time to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Not for me, but because someone you know needs to hear this. Someone in your family. Someone at your church. Someone who's been carrying the same weight you've been carrying. Share this with them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that their best is enough too. And as you go from here, as you step back into your life, I want you to carry this with you. Not as something you have to earn or prove, but as something that's already true. You are loved. You are forgiven. You are enough. You always were. You always will be. And God is smiling at you right now, so proud of everything you've done, everything you've overcome, everything you've survived. He's not disappointed. He's not keeping score. He's just loving you. Completely. Fully. Forever. Your best is enough. Rest in that. Live in that. Believe that. And let it change everything.